Wrapping up this week, today is Friday. This week was full of unexpected events. Nazira Simbayeva, good afternoon. Today, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev ordered to form a working group with Singaporean colleagues to address the complex issues of public housing. Kazakhstan tends to meet UN standard of housing of 30 square kilometers per person. In 2022, the provision of housing reached around 24 square meters per person. Kazakhstan faces several issues with public housing sector. Our correspondent Biktur Wakbayev will lead the interview with Kazakhstani expert on public housing Rawan Khadesov. Biktur, are you with us?
Thank you, Nazira. So today we are in the office of Kazakhstan Housing Company, and with us Rawan Khadesov, head of Strategic Development Department, and he will tell us in detail about the problems that Kazakhstan faces today with the public housing. Rawan, the floor is yours.
Yes, today in Kazakhstan we have several problems of public housing. The first problem is that we have 650,000 people who need housing, mainly socially vulnerable segments of the population. Additionally, it increases by 35,000 people annually, while state each year builds only 15,000 apartments. So that's not sufficient to meet growing demand. We have poor quality of public housing. As you saw in the news, some public houses were collapsed because of the low quality, and we need to do something with that. And another problem that we face today, lack of schools, kindergartens and parks within the walking distance of public housing. Residents of public housing complain for underdeveloped infrastructure around houses. So to tackle these challenges, we are exploring Singaporeans' experience, how they tackle these challenges with limited space.
Singapore, as one of the smartest nations, overcame all challenges with public housing and, as of today, successfully provides 80% of its citizens with public housing, while citizens actively collaborate and contribute to the economic development of the country. On this note, I would like to pass the floor to our special correspondent in Singapore, who will directly broadcast from the Office of Housing and Development Board, Nazim Kwangali. Nazim?
Today we are at the Housing and Development Board, which is Singapore's public housing authority responsible for planning, development and building of Singapore's housing estate.
Okay, so HDB now actually provides housing for almost 90% of Singaporeans. So what happens is that they build the different towns and also estimate the demand and supply using our population estimate, as well as the balloting and queuing numbers that they get from each quarter, and then that will allow them to estimate how much new flats to build. And there is also a very active resale market. So basically that actually helps to facilitate the housing supply to allow most of the Singaporeans to apply and also live in a HDB.
So the Housing and Development Board, which is Singapore's public housing authority, plays a number of different roles. It designs public housing, it builds public housing, it finances the purchase of public housing through loans, and then it also plays a role of allocation of public housing. It decides who gets public housing and who doesn't. In the day-to-day, it also looks after the state of the estate, right? Maintenance services and so on. So it's a kind of an end-to-end service, and it's not just the HDB. The HDB's work is also integrated with other public agencies. For example, Urban Redevelopment Authority, the National Environment Agency, in the way they plan neighborhoods to make sure that in every neighborhood, residents are within a certain distance, right, to access key public services. Playgrounds, schools, libraries, markets, even job opportunities.
Following the official visit of our working group to Singapore, a set of strategic recommendations for public housing development were presented to the head of the state.
As part of the working group that studies Singaporean experience, Rawan and his team has spent a lot of time in Singapore studying experience of HDB. So Rawan, could you share your recommendations for the public housing of Kazakhstan?
Actually in Kazakhstan we have similar company to HDB. It is called Kazakhstan Housing Company. It's a single operator of housing construction in Kazakhstan, but it has limited functions. It only provides financing for construction of public housing. So what we have learned from HDB is that HDB is a master developer of integrated development of micro districts. So HDB designs, builds and maintenance of public housing. And when HDB designs the project, it takes into account all needs of Singaporeans. For instance, existence of schools, kindergartens, jobs and parks within the walking distance. And I think this is what makes Singaporeans happy, when you have all social infrastructure within the walking distance for you and for your children for better life. So based on the HDB experience, we have come up with 3 recommendations. First recommendations will be provide Kazakhstan Housing Company with the function of master developer by the analogy of HDB. The second recommendations will be increase financing for construction sufficient apartments for vulnerable people of our population. And the third recommendations, of course, we understand that it is very challenging to implement it for the whole country. So we recommend to make a pilot project in Astana city.
Okay, thank you, Rawan, for the recommendations.
That's all for this week. Thank you for being with us. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned. Nazira Simbaeva, have a great weekend.